Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm gonna be giving my updated view and just like an updated overlook on the 2022 Georgia Senate runoff election, which is set to take place in just 4 days from now on December 6th. That's this Tuesday. If you live in Georgia and you haven't voted already, go out and do it as soon as you can, if it's possible, if you're of age, and obviously all of the things that make you eligible to vote. But anyways, hope everybody watching is having a good day. And today we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about the early vote in Georgia. Going to be looking at GeorgiaVotes.com. It's a fancy website that I've been looking at for the last couple of days that has been giving me a better idea of how the race is turning out in terms of the early vote data. And it also, and also just looking at polling, we've gotten a lot more polling since my last video last week. That has shown Raphael Warnock pretty much consistently ahead of Herschel Walker, and and in a and by pretty strong margins, at least for a Democrat in the Peach State. If you go to RCP here, Real Clear Politics, a more right-leaning pollster, or political group. They have Warnock up by 3 points. You see the CNN poll that came out. I think it was today. It was released, but it was taken, last week. Has Warnock up by 4 and at 52% of the vote. You got a Survey USA poll. He's at 50%. In an Emerson poll, he's leading by 2 and he's at 51%. And in an AARP poll, he is at 51%. So you can see in all four of these polls that Real Clear Politics is using, Warnock is already at a majority of the vote. Obviously, you need a majority to win a runoff in Georgia, and you need, to win it outright, you need a majority of the vote, which Warnock nor Walker got on election day. That's why we're in this situation. But it's pretty interesting to see this translate, or see the polling data and look at the early voting data. So GeorgiaVotes.com, as I said, this is a handy dandy website that pretty much just tracks early voting data. It's talking, it's pretty much solely focusing on the 2022 Georgia runoff right now. There's really not much else to cover in Georgia for political, for politics. All of the general elections are over. But as you can see here, we're 4 days out, because it's December 2nd when I'm recording this video. You may be watching it sometime later. Maybe you're even watching it after it happened. And my takes age poorly. But otherwise, anyways, you can see that, by this point in the 2022 general election, or in the early voting, I guess, process. There were about 2.5 million voters who are early votes. Now in the runoff, there's only about 1.5 million votes. So that's about a 1 million. It's about a million. Vote drop off, and you can see the turnout for the 2022 runoff election is 35% lower than the general. So, uh, and the runoff system in Georgia, and pretty much universally was designed to, hurt Democrats, well, not Democrats at first, because Democrats were the ones pushing, for it back in the Jim Crow era, but, to suppress the black vote. And now, it's been, very beneficial to Republicans. They've used the runoff system many times to, they've benefited from it many times. They were able to win a Senate seat back in 1992. And they lost the general election day vote, but in the runoff election, the Republican actually defeated the incumbent Democrat. A very interesting story. And if you go back to 2008, pretty close election, a pretty close general election, but Saxby Chambliss did not get over 50% against Democrat Jim Martin. You know what happened a month later in the December runoff? He won by 15 points. It was a very decisive victory. So historically, the runoffs have been very beneficial to Republicans in Georgia, but ever since Democrats really been able to capitalize on black turnout and uh, you know, uh, turning out their base in the Atlanta suburbs, whether that be with moderate Republicans who've been kind of disfranchised, or kind of there. I guess you could call them Republican refugees, that are dissatisfied with the Trump wing of the party. They may have voted for Brian Kemp, but voted for Biden, and possibly Warnock and Ossoff in 2021, or 2020 to 2021, and I voted for Warnock this time. But as you can see, if you go down to be more specific, so the general election day vote in Georgia was about, this year was about 28% black. Right now, with the early voting, it's at 32%. 32% of the early vote in Georgia is black. So that's a 4 point increase. That's very good news for Warnock since he was already able to win. I guess a plurality of the vote. As you look, if you can look back here, he won by about 0.9% against Walker, and he would have won if it wasn't for Georgia's runoff election. And that could potentially hurt him with turnout being down among black voters, at least historically, but it doesn't really seem like that's happening. It has narrowed, the percentage of the black vote has gone down as more Republican voters are coming to the polls, since it's a lot, since we're getting a lot closer to the election. As I said, we're only 4 days away. It was 38%, I think, a couple of days ago. Sorry, I'm talking so fast. I should slow down. So now it's at 32%. But if the white vote, the white rural vote, goes down quite a bit, that which is very possible. We saw that in 2020. We saw a decrease in rural areas. In those Senate runoffs from the general elections. And consequently, and we saw pretty much we saw a decrease in Democratic raw votes, but not nearly as much as there were for Republicans. And Democrats were able to win majorities of the votes in those runoffs, and that's what's got them the Senate, and what flipped Georgia blue on so many levels. But if you also look down here at the early vote numbers, you can see right here that so obviously or I don't know if many of you know this, but older voters, 65, those that are 65 years old, or older, they are the ones who tend to use the early voting the most. Of course, Democrats use it a lot more than Republicans do, but mostly older voters tend to lean heavily towards the GOP, and a lot of them, many of them who have already voted early, 95% of them have come out for Herschel Walker, or have come out to vote early. We don't know if they're for Herschel Walker, but most likely the older vote is going to go to him unless something crazy happens. But if you also look here, for non-voters, or well, if you go to here to early voters, it says right here, about 90% of runoff early voters voted early in the 2022 general. White and black voters are pretty much tied at 90%. White voters a little bit ahead of them on that front. But if you look here, there's actually more black voters who are voting early for this runoff that actually did not vote at all in the general election. And if you look at the white vote for that, that is about 3%. So that actually is pretty interesting. That there is more black, a larger percentage of the black vote that is coming out for Warnock this time than there is, that didn't come out for him, or didn't come out to vote on last month than there is for the white vote, and that's a really good sign for him. And if you also look here, I know I'm kind of rambling, but bear with me. If you go down here to, actually, let's not go to the counties, let's go to the congressional district. If you look at, which areas are turning out the most, you can see it's pretty much, uh, uh, excuse me, it's pretty much coming from largely Democratic areas. Turnout everywhere, has increased over the last couple of days because, it's getting closer to the election. But if you look here, Georgia second, this is the only competitive seat in Georgia. Sanford Bishop holds the seat, but it's pretty, it's not safe Democratic, but, it's pretty, it's pretty Democratic. Let's look at the numbers. It's making up 62%, or almost 63% of the voters have turned out already. If you go to Georgia's fourth district, this is in the Atlanta area, 62%. Georgia's fifth, this is a Republican district. But if you go down here, Georgia's sixth, 54%. if you go down to the rural areas, they have gone up as of late. Georgia 14th, for instance, this is on Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, is at 59% turnout, but that's higher than it was before. But once again, Republicans tend to come out later on election day. But if you look at the Atlanta area, for the most part, it's pretty large. This is a Republican district. Let's try to find a Democratic one. This is the Georgia. I cannot remember the Georgia districts. This is kind of annoying. Where is Georgia 9? Where's the Democrat? Lucy McBath. Yeah, if you look here in the 7th district, it's at 57%. So, in some instances, you do see Republican districts getting higher turnout, but once again, you see like the fourth district, which is probably the most populated area in the Atlanta area, from my understanding. Uh, has about it's got the most votes out of them all. It's got the highest turnout, and it's a deep blue district. So that makes it really hard for Walker. And when you look at some of the exit polls, or not exit polls, but you look at some of the data that is showing him losing independence to Warnock by 15 points. That's pretty substantial, and that's really going to hurt him in the Atlanta suburbs, which he already didn't do too well in. A lot of the moderate Republicans that voted for Brian Kemp refused to come out for Herschel Walker, or even voted for Warnock. You can compare Cobb County. I think Kemp only lost this county to Stacey Abrams by 4. Warnock won it by 16 points, almost more. Fulton, Warnock won by almost 50. Kemp was able to get almost 30% of the vote here. Did very well for a Republican in here. This is the county where Atlanta is, pretty much. DeKalb, Warnock won by 70. I can't remember exactly how much Kemp lost it by, but you get my point that Kemp significantly outperformed in the suburbs, and while Walker did really well in the rural areas compared to a lot of candidates, rural areas, white rural voters are, less inclined, or are more likely to be less likely to be as educated as voters in urban areas. They may not know or may not be, as politically active and, inclined, I guess, to vote in the runoff election, and as you look at, these congressional districts, you can see how, the Democratic areas have really been spiking. Walker hasn't been holding many events. I believe that there was just a scandal that broke about him claiming tax, I forget what it's called, tax exemption, I guess. In his state, in stated that the state that he's been living in for a while, Texas, actually. Of course, he is technically from Georgia. He has a history in Georgia, but essentially, he's saying, essentially, he's running in Georgia, and he needs to be, a resident of Georgia by the time, that he decides to, be a candidate for office. And technically, he's still living in Texas. So there's been some talk that he might be running for Senate illegally. It's just another one of his many scandals. Will it affect him in the general, in the runoff election? I'm not sure. I think the Walker definitely has a chance to win this race. I would not call it a lock for Warnock by any means. The runoffs definitely do hurt Democrats historically, but at the same time, you look at the numbers and you look at how bad it looks for Herschel Walker right now. And while he probably will improve over the next couple of days, turnout, turnout being lower, turnout going up, it was, I think, 50%. It was like 60% lower a couple of days ago from the general from the sorry, let me put that into words you can terms you can understand. Essentially, I think a couple days ago when I first checked this website out, it was the turnout was 57% lower than the general election in in November. Now it's only 35% lower. And what do we know about turnout? Usually when it's higher, it tends to benefit Democrats. Now, obviously, a lot of the turnout, a lot of the early votes that are coming in now are benefiting Republicans. The white vote is going up, but the black vote is still really, really high, and it's high enough to probably withstand any surge that Walker gets. You look at the early vote. You look that there are already a lot of the a lot of the older voters have come out and already voted for which tend to be more Republican leaning, have already come out to vote. So it makes you think You know, there's and when you look here at 65 plus, at the older voters, only 3% of them that voted on the only 3% of them that are voting early voted on the day of. So there's not much time to make this up for Walker. I don't know if exactly I put that into the right terms, but anyways, I'm kind of rambling. Anyways, when you look, I was able to make a Senate polling average. If you don't recall, I was making polling averages for these Senate races, and I was able to make one for Warnock once, or for the runoff election once I got enough data, and I'm comparing and contrasting it with Real Clear Politics' average. They have Warnock up by a 3.2%. I My adjusted average, which accounts for now 2022, the 2022 polling miss, has Warnock up by 1.25%. So there is, definitely, I think, a little bit of underestimation of Walker when you look at some of this polling data, but it's still really good for Warnock that he's at 50% in a lot of these polls. And when you remember that Emerson College is a pollster that was pretty accurate back in the general election. I think they had Warnock +2. And that's exactly what happened. Or well, it was Warnock +1, but either way, they were really close. If you go back to the runoff elections in Georgia, if I remember correctly, there weren't a lot of polls that showed either candidate at 50% most of the time. And they were, hovering around it, but it wasn't really until the end of it that Leffler or Warnock were, at 50%. In a lot of polls they were, but if you look at most of them, they were, at 48, 49%. It was pretty tied. Warnock's already, been at 50% in almost every single poll, and he's only lost, I believe, one poll, and that was the Phillips Academy poll that's not being used by RCP, and they tend to throw out a lot of useful polling firms, but I don't really use Phillips Academy all that much. But either way, I guess the real message that I'm trying to send to you guys is that Warnock is doing really well in Georgia with just 4 days to go. He's got Walker on the ropes. I think that he really is. I think Warnock is really on track to win. That could change. The early votes getting better for Walker, but that was entirely expected. And he's still losing. In the polls to Warnock, and he has not really been campaigning as much. And with Republicans kind of being, I guess demoralized after the midterms didn't go too well for them, you know, they might not be as inclined to come out and support Walker. I'm sure that he's still going to come close, and he could absolutely win, but I don't think that he is going to win. I think he's going to lose by around 2 to 3%. As of right now, it could honestly be bigger, since polls in Georgia did underestimate Warnock by about 2 points in the general election, and let me get that out. But either way, Warnock's doing really well. Walker's, not doing too well. He doesn't have a lot of time to make this up. The black share of the electorate is is still really high. 4 points higher than it, technically needs to be for it to match the 2020 election results and the 2022 general election results. And Warnock won. The plurality of the vote, or a plurality. Bah, I can't speak. A plurality, whatever. You know what I mean. He got under 50%, but he still beat Walker in the first round with 28% of the black vote, or 28% of the vote being black. He obviously gets like 90% of the black vote, but either way, it's 4 points higher, and white voters, I think, are going to fall off. There's not a lot of time for him to make this up, and, turnout's going to be lower, obviously, than the, general election. That's just how runoff elections work. That's how they were essentially designed. But Democrats, I think, have it high enough to work their way to a 51 to 49 Senate majority, and have a better chance at holding the Senate in 2024, which I don't think will happen. Since the map is really unfavorable to them. But every seat counts in Georgia. Getting Georgia into their column would put them, would give them an extra seat, and every seat counts. And these kinds of elections, every seat counted in 2022, and it will count just about the same in 2024. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was kind of scattered and, just kind of talking really sporadically. Just wanted to get this video out for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. We got 4 days to go until the Georgia runoff, and technically, probably about a week until my first 2024 Senate prediction. Whenever YAPMs puts up the an official map for 2024, which will probably be after the Georgia runoff. But nonetheless, I would not be surprised if Walker won. Tell me who you think is going to win. I think I know, already who most of you think, is the favorite right now, and I assume that I would agree with most of those statements. But anyways, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, turn on notifications, so you don't miss another video. I'll be making a video, an election night video for the runoff election in Georgia, probably either tomorrow or on Sunday. So just watch out for that. I got a lot to do this weekend, so I will not be as active on YouTube as usual. But either way, check out my non-political channel Interactor127 and my comrade Growling2666, and I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things politics. See ya.